Riding the Baldy Bruiser, if you're looking for a way to punish yourself on your mountain bike, the Baldy Bruiser is what you want to do. Riding the Baldy Bruiser is like getting punched right in the... There are some really fun parts though. So if you're thinking about doing it, this video might be helpful for you. I'm going to give you 3 pieces of information in this video. Number 1, I'll give you a general overview of the route, which is kind of like my impressions and overall remarks about the route against and alongside some of the things mentioned from BIKEPACKING.com. Number 2, I will give you my full day-to-day breakdown, all the miles, all the stats and the specs, as well as the links from Ride with GPS to accompany that. And number 3, I will give you a handful of special considerations, things that I think you should know if you're going to try to tackle this route, and things that will be very helpful for you. The namesake of this route is Mount Baldy, go figure, which sits right in the middle of the route and rises to a formidable elevation of 7,800 feet. BIKEPACKING.com rates this route at a 7.5 for its steep grades and its climbing. I do agree with that. Cass Gilbert says he'll do the route in 3 full days and 2 partial days. I do agree with that, but I think there are some stipulations which I will get to later on. If you are like me, when you looked at this route profile, you saw this giant peak right in the center that goes all the way from 3,500 feet to 7,800 feet without any breaks, and you got a little nervous. That is not what you need to be concerned about. I'll get to those details later on as well. If you live in Southern California or nearby, I do recommend this route. If you do not live in one of those 2 places, I would say you could probably skip it and find something closer to home. Either way, if you're curious about my experience on the route, stick around. On day 0, the day before we started riding, I found a small campground called Millard Campground that's just north of Pasadena. And that is where I parked my van. This was kind of like our first staging area. And I figured that this is where the route terminates, so we would ride in, and this is basically where we'd come back to our vehicle. What we underestimated, and this is special consideration number 1, is that it took a while to get from Pasadena all the way to Big Bear and begin riding. It's only 1 rail line to get from there to the depot in San Bernardino, where you transfer to the red bus, and then you take that bus into Big Bear. But it just took a while. So if you're going to take all of that public transportation, plan accordingly. Something to also note is my 3-inch tires on my Karate Monkey wouldn't fit in the bike rack of that red bus while they were inflated. So I had to deflate them. It's obviously not a big deal. I pumped them back up when we got dropped off, but it was just like one more step that we had to do before we began riding. Day 1 is some of the most scenic of that entire route. It's that classic arid SoCal forest that you're probably somewhat familiar with. It's very rocky, has a little bit of water, and contains what is known as the Devil's Staircase. Special consideration number 2, although there is a lot of downhill over the course of this first part of the route, there are a lot of sections that just cannot be ridden safely on a packed bike. So you will be going very slow at certain points and carrying your bike.
I want to ride it, but I don't want to land on those rocks. I most certainly would have spilled my bike there.
We rode until we ran out of daylight and found a beautiful impromptu campsite just off the road. And just so you know, there is tons of camping available. That is not something you need to be concerned about. On day 1, we only completed about 18 miles. So if I were to do this again, I would take the transit to Big Bear on day 0, stay the night there so that I would be completely ready to ride on the morning of day 1. Day 2, we covered about 40 miles. After you finish the steep descent, you make it into Lake Arrowhead. We had a nice breakfast at a waffle place in Lake Arrowhead Village, although that place is a bit touristy. You can resupply here at Stater Brothers, or as you make your way to Blue Jay, you'll pass at Jensen's. You'll have a nice chill descent to Silverwood Lake, which brings us to special consideration number 3, a little route modification that I highly recommend.
There's 2 gates. The road this way goes into the group camp. The gate on this side goes and parallels the lake. And as you get down towards the bottom of the lake, or near the lake, there's a bike trail that cuts off. It's about...
This guy told me about it. Remember to talk to locals. They know more about the area than you ever will. Or I will, for that matter. As you exit Dark Canyon Road, you're supposed to get spit out onto 138. But before you hit that highway, if you look to your right, you'll see a gate with a paved road. If you go around that paved road will take you to a paved bike path. That paved bike path follows the southern line of the lake and takes you all the way around and also through an abandoned campground. I'm not sure why this wasn't included on the original route, but I think this is a much better option than getting on a busy 2-lane highway. Now, eventually, yes, you do have to jump back onto Highway 138 and do a short climb where you'll have a nice view of the lake, which will dump you out onto the Cleghorn Fire Road. Fun fact, this is where you cross the PCT. And this is also where I started to get into a little bit of trouble. Up until that point, you have multiple options for shade, for water access, and after that, you are very exposed and there is a large section with no water. So just be prepared for that. Have you any idea how hard it is to ride a mountain bike with one hand and hold camera with the other? We spent the night up on that ridge, again, a little bit low on water, but we were still okay and had a beautiful overlooking view of Silverwood Lake as well as Victorville.
That's where we came out, and then
It's
we
like
rode
right around
right
there.
that way. Okay.
Porta potty's right down in there. Ooh, that was a climb. Pause it. Okay, Ryan, you big dummy, why are you complaining about not having water when there is a giant lake directly behind you and there is a Forest Service station just west of Silverwood Lake that is a known access point for water marked on the route? I would tell you right now. So, number 1, concerning the Forest Service station, I did go there and I cannot remember exactly why, but I could not access water. Either it was closed and the water was inside, or if the water was outside the building, it was shut off. So I assure you I did go there, I did look for it, but I couldn't get water. Number 2, trying to pull water directly from Silverwood Lake. So when I was planning this route, it was fairly clear that there are a lot of water access points and towns along the way, making it seem like it would not be too much of a stretch to get through this route without having to filter water. And in hindsight, obviously, I should have been carrying one. So we'll talk about gear just for one quick minute. Something like this Katahdin water filter would have been perfect on this trip. This is an extremely simple, compact water filter. It doesn't take up much space. It's super easy to use. It's just a squeeze water filter. My buddy Anthony showed me this. We took a couple of these into the Wind River Range and used them. They're great. If you think you're going to have access to water that is already relatively clean and doesn't need a lot of filtering, or you don't think you're going to need to filter a ton of water, something like this is perfect. I cannot talk about bike packing without talking about these Volet straps. In my hand, this red one is the 20-inch and the orange one is the 15-inch. I do not go bike packing without these things. The clasp is simple. The rubber is high quality. They have some flex and some stretch to them. You can use them for just about anything. So if you're going bike packing, just pick up a couple of these things and you'll be glad you did. I will have links in the description below for both of these things. Day 3, this is where things started to get pretty interesting. So we started out the day with that massive descent on the Cleghorn Fire Road that took us down to I-15. And this is where I started to get hit with the heat. I was completely out of water, the terrain is completely exposed, there's no shade, and the temps were over 90 degrees. But let me back up for just a moment and explain the bigger picture. I was actually not aware that I was going to have to deal with temperatures that were going to be above 90. Even the forecast didn't tell me that. But what was happening was a little weather phenomena that I was unfamiliar with at the time called Santa Ana winds. So normally the coast is very cool because you have the ocean breezes coming in from the west that cool the inland area. Now, during the Santa Ana winds, the wind reverses direction and the wind comes in from the east, from the desert, and brings all that hot air to the coastal towns. This was something that I was completely surprised by and almost ruined the trip. I had a very rough afternoon, but I was able to put down a few Gatorades, I put down a few tacos, and spend some time lying on the cool concrete floor outside of the Del Taco, and eventually recovered. I used my velo straps again to connect some Gatorade bottles onto the fork of my bike, and we took off. So my recommendation for the timing on this route is it's probably best done in the spring. It's probably better to deal with a little bit of snow and some chillier temperatures than to deal with something over 90 degrees and completely exposed in the sun. So after I recovered, we began our descent down into Lytle Creek. Now, this begins the largest climb of the route, but as I said, don't worry about it too much. Now, here's how it goes. The ascent coming out of Lytle Creek starts out with a long, straight, exposed paved road. After that, you'll transition into a rocky wash type road. Again, not that much fun. It's kind of hard to push your bike and pedal your bike through some of that stuff, but eventually that transitions to a nice forest road. And just a very quick mention about the bikes. I rode a Surly Karate Monkey. It's got 3-inch tires, no suspension, no dropper. It's a great bike for something like this. It's a really good bike packing bike. That's why I got it. And then my dad, who is technically a senior citizen and can outride most of you guys watching this video, he rode my Santa Cruz Bronson. This is a normal, like all trail, full suspension bike, 27.5 wheels. So 2 very different bikes. I think that both bikes worked well for this. I mean, personally, I still favor the Karate Monkey anytime I'm adding weight, but you could ride this on any hardtail and any capable full suspension bike. On day 4, we continued this climb and the road actually improved. The road becomes relatively smooth, the grade is very comfortable, and there's a gate that blocks all traffic, so you're not dealing with any other vehicles. So I was anticipating this climb to be quite hellish, but it actually hasn't been that bad. The road is fairly smooth, and we're already at 6,800 feet, just an hour and a half out of camp, and that's our summit. Right there, We finished this climb, and this brings us to special consideration number 4. Mount Baldy is an actual ski resort. I didn't even know this. So, you know what sits at the top of a ski resort? A lodge complete with running water, bathrooms, chili, coffee, Snickers bars, anything that a bike packer could want, basically. You have another massive descent all the way from 7,800 feet all the way down to 4,200 feet, mostly paved. There are a few accommodations in town, but not too much. As you get through town, look to your right and you will see the gate for Glendora Ridge Road. But just go around it, that gate is to stop vehicles, not bikes. The Glendora Ridge Road is one of my favorite parts of that entire route. There is some easy level cruising, just a little bit of climbing, and some nice long sweeping descents. This descent brings you to the north end of the San Gabriel Reservoir. As noted on BIKEPACKING.com, there is a campground there, but it only operates on the weekends. There is some food, but I think it's a bit of a stretch to call that a resupply, so we just had a beer. And since we couldn't camp there, we continued up the paved road and camped just inside the turnoff for the Trabuco Truck Trail. I have no idea if I'm saying that right. Back to you, Ryan. And for air mattresses, this Nemo mattress has continued to be phenomenal. I love the way it blows up, I love the way it deflates, and it's super comfortable. And sadly, this is where our adventure on the planned route of the Baldy Bruiser came to an end. I simply ran out of time because I had to get back to work. Honestly, when I'm bike packing, when I'm biking in general, I just kind of gawk around a bit because I like taking in the views. So what can I say? Alongside the San Gabriel Reservoir, there's a nice paved road that takes you all the way back down into town and also gives you the option to get on a bike path as well. Jump on the train, head back to Pasadena, got back to the van, and we were safe and sound. If you are not battling extreme heat, if you carry enough water, and if you don't lollygag quite as much as I do, I think this route can very easily be ridden in about 4.5 days if you're in pretty good shape. And that concludes everything I have for you. Thank you for watching. As always, if you found this video to be entertaining, educational, or helpful, please hit that like button, consider subscribing. If you have any questions, put them in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. BIKEPACKING.com rates this route at a 7.0.